Good Thursday, distinguished guests and audience. Welcome to the fourth Marintec Innovation Webinar Series. I'm Jingbao Wang, Deputy Director of Shanghai SNEMI, also Chairman of ITTC Specialist Committee. I'm happy to moderate this webinar, Smarter Marine Logistics, that will bring you some latest insights and ideas from current maritime world. Ocean shipping is the most important way of international trade. It is estimated that over 2/3 of total world trade volume are dependent on sea transportation. During this process, logistics, including ports, custom, loading, unloading, and shipping, all plays a very important part. Smarter logistics is expected to make more contribution to not only efficiency and cost, also to the lower emission. Today's keynotes and guest speakers will share their latest research findings and viewpoints to this webinar and discuss the way of smarter logistics in marine industry. To start with, I'd like to give a brief introduction to keynote speaker, Dr. Martin Stoffel, because I'm sure you're quite familiar with. Hello, Dr. Martin. Martin is an old friend of Marintec China and the foremost economist and thinker in the maritime world. His books and academic papers have impacted the maritime industry for many, many years. He's also the non-executive president of Clarkson Research Services. Now I'm greatly honored to introduce Dr. Jane Hoffman from a United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, abbreviated as UNCTAD. Hello, Dr. Jane.
A
Say hello to our audience.
From Geneva. Good morning.
Okay. Dr. Jane joined the organization in 2003 and became chief of the Trade Logistics branch in 2016. He spent 6 years with the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean in Santiago de Chile, and 2 years with IMO in London and Santiago. Jane also initiated the UNCTAD Maritime Country Profiles and the annual Liner Shipping Connectivity Index. From 2014 to 2018, Jane was president of the International Association of Maritime Economists. Two eminent panelists from China also joined this webinar. First is Mr. Wang Dongbo, Deputy Manager of COSCO Shipping Research and Consultancy Center. Hello, Mr. Wang.
Hello, good day to everybody. Thank you, Mr. Dr. Wang. Nice to meet everybody here.
Okay, it's an honor to have you with us. With more than 30 years career in shipping and shipbuilding industry, Mr. Wang has got rich professional experience and deep understanding of the industry. Mr. Wang is also Deputy Secretary General of China Association of National Shipbuilding Industry. Secondly is Mr. Cai Dongwei, Chief Engineer of Offshore Engineering Group from Shanghai Zhenhua Heavy Industry Co. Limited. Hello, Mr. Cai.
Hello, Dr. Wang and audience. Good evening.
Okay, with 23 years experience in port lifting machinery and offshore engineering equipment, Mr. Cai is quite familiar with design of port container crane, wind farm installation vessel, and other offshore equipment. He's deeply involved the famous projects such as Yangsan Port and the Hong Kong Zhuhai Macau Bridge. Well, the format of this webinar will be Dr. Martin's presentation first, which will take about 15 to 20 minutes, then followed by Dr. Jane's presentation with about the same time, then 20 minutes comments, interactions from speakers and the panelists. The final 15 to 20 minutes, we will take questions from audience. Please submit your questions to the Q&A box on your screen. Now let's warmly welcome Dr. Martin for the presentation. Welcome.
Thank you warmly, Dr. Wang. I'm honored to be here again. This is a great challenge for me. You kindly thought up the title Smarter Maritime Logistics, and I would say this is the most challenging one that we faced in this series of webinars because it brings so many people involved. And what I'd like to do is present my view of where the industry is on this subject at the moment and a particular way of moving forward. And so if I could share my screen with you, I'll just go through my slide presentation. Nope, wrong one. Is that right? Didn't get the right slide. Okay. Hopefully you're all seeing my my first slide. If not, no doubt I'll get a text from somebody in a moment. But basically, the title is Smarter Maritime Logistics, and my aim here is to focus on the opportunities for applying innovative I4 technology to the whole process of moving cargo between shippers and receivers efficiently and to meet their commercial objectives, but also in the new worlds that we're entering, one which is very sensitive to environmental performance and emissions. I've got 4 topics I'd like to cover in this brief session. First of all, smarter maritime logistics. What really is the challenge? I'll try and clarify that a little and then move on to the first aspect that I'll focus on, which is the cargo transport operation itself. I think this is probably when most people think of maritime logistics, they think of the difficulties of getting containers moved in sequence and so forth. And that's what I'll be covering in part 2. And then in part 3, I'll move on to an area which I think in practice is probably more problematic than the physical transport of cargo, and that is ensuring that the documentation that's associated with every cargo parcel is actually available and allows the physical transport to proceed smoothly. And then finally, the question of security is a very big one. I don't intend to spend very long on that, but that's my 4 topics. If we start with the challenge of smarter maritime logistics, the reason it's more difficult than most of the other smart topics we've addressed in this sequence of webinars is that actually it involves the whole of international trade and many different companies and many operations, as indeed Dr. Wang referred to in his introductory remarks. Let me start by looking at the very, very big global picture. And what we're focusing on is better systems for cargoes and clients. And if we start off with the cargoes, on the first aspect of this are the producers of raw materials and agricultural products. And they excuse me one moment, I just got a I'm going to have to go into my screen sharing again, excuse me. Stop sharing, okay. Sorry about this, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just seem to have somehow selected the wrong screen. I don't know how that happened, but let me share my screen again. And I believe share.
Dr. Martin, take it
Yeah.
easy.
Can you hear me, Dr. Wang? Are you not seeing my screen at the moment?
Yes, that's fine. Recovered.
The camera is switched. The camera has switched, has it? Let's have a look. Try again. Oh dear. Sorry about this, folks. Just a moment. It's trying to persuade me to leave the meeting now. The wonders of technology, it's brilliant when it goes right. I'll stop sharing and let's see if we can start again.
Okay, Dr. Martin, we will give you
Yeah.
another few minutes for you to recover this. And during this process,
yeah, the problem is that, let me just escape from that. For some reason, my computer has dropped the
yes, Dr. Martin, I will give you one more minutes for
Okay.
you to recover this. Then
and
during
then we
this
carry
case,
on. Yeah.
okay,
that's
okay. Okay.
I do believe.
I
Well,
think
as
we
all,
were almost there. The last one you had was okay, and then you start the presentation, and it should work then. Because I think you probably have two screens and then moves to the other one. No,
yeah.
it's still the same.
Recovered.
Are you now seeing it?
No,
we can see.
need the same.
Are you now seeing my? You should just see a blank screen and it says Smart Maritime Logistics. Do you see that?
Yes, we can see.
Okay.
I think it's okay. It is the presenter's view, not the one for the audience.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. Okay. Well, in that case, just a moment. I can switch this. Let me just switch. Oh no, that's not it, is it? Toggle subtitles, black and white. No. You should. Yeah, it's which you can toggle the.
Yes, Dr. Martin, would you please move to next page?
Yeah. Okay. I think, Jan, what you're saying is you're seeing the presenter view, not the.
Yeah,
the
we
one,
also
right?
see like the next slide with your notes under.
Yeah, no, that's there is supposed to be in here. Move slideshow options, toggle subtitles.
But it's okay unless you have any secrets in your notes.
No, I have no secrets.
Hello.
But it's,
Hi, Dr.
Yeah.
Martin. If
Yeah.
we can share your PowerPoint in the Hong Kong office, is it okay? You want us to share?
No, look, honestly, as soon as I, I promise you this will be okay. Just give me 2 seconds and
Sure,
I'll start
no problem.
again.
Take your time. Take your time. Thank you.
Because
Yes, Dr. Martin. Yes, during this process, may I give some more introduction to Dr. Jen? Yes, maybe one. Seems okay.
it's oh dear, it's just completely. I mean, I've done dozens of these things, and I have never known this happen before. Let's have a look. We go to there.
Just to close it.
We go to maximize. and it should
now,
be. Are you now seeing, Jan? Are you now is that
good.
right?
we still see
Yes.
it with notes, but I think for me, the way I see it, it's okay, because sometimes.
Okay. Well, no, this is it. Just for some reason, it is totally refusing to switch to the full screen, and of course, by its nature, you. Sorry, I'll. Very frustrating. Apologies, guys. Okay, well, we'll stick with this one if that's okay.
Okay.
There is a toggle.
Take it easy. Okay.
On this, yeah. Display settings, show taskbar, see all slides, zoom into slide, back up, toggle subtitles, more slideshow options, hide presenter view. Okay. Are you now seeing the whole lot? Or are you?
Yes, with the very rich pictures.
Yeah, we're getting lots of pictures, but no, that's the one that. Okay. Stop sharing.
Well, Dr. Martin, yes,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, shall we move
Yeah,
to
no, you
Dr.
you
Jen's
carry
PPT
on,
first? Okay.
You carry on, Dr. Wang, and I will.
Yes,
I'll
you
drop
can
out for the
reconnect.
time
Okay.
being.
Okay. So,
Okay.
Dr. Jen, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Yes. Would you please show us your presentation first? Okay. Then when Dr. Martin ready, then we will give him another chance. Okay.
Only if that's okay for Dr. Martin.
Okay, Dr. Jen, your turn first. Okay.
Okay, you need to authorize me to share my camera. I was just switched off by you, but then I can start my share screen, and let me see if it works for me.
Wait,
okay.
Stella.
Yeah, it's good. It'll.
Yes, we are working on it. Just a second.
Yeah, there we are. A wonderful recording. Yeah, sorry about that. I think Martin's presentation, my presentation, they complement each other. So I try to be quick, and then we go back to Martin's.
I think we need Dr. Martin to
very,
stop sharing.
Presentation. So, Dr. Wang, you want me to start my presentation? Is this correct?
Yes. So now let's warmly welcome Dr. Jen's presentation.
Okay. So let's see if this one works. You should now be seeing this presentation. And I hope you see now the full screen about shipping through the pandemic, BC, DC, and AC. Is this correct?
Yes.
Good. So BC, DC, and AC. BC is before Corona, and DC is during Corona, and AC is after Corona. So I'm going to share some long-term trends with you, then some waves of demand and supply, and then something that is really about this issue of the fourth industrial revolution, about technologies, where we want to lock in the advances made during lockdown, because we are actually advancing with the digitalization to some extent due to the pandemic or motivated by the pandemic. Let me start with some long-term trends. We've just published our latest liner shipping connectivity index. Here we have the third quarter of the top 10 ports. Most are in China and most are in Asia. I trust that is interesting. Every single port in the world can be seen on our website. The underlying components from where we generate this index actually show interesting stories. And you see here the average starting from 2006 until the third quarter of this year, how the dark blue line, the ships get bigger. These are averages indexed per country, fleet deployment. The orange line shows the deployed total capacity per country. And there you do see the little dip in the second quarter. That is COVID, but it has come back. 4 of the components that really measure connectivity, like the number of weekly calls, the number of direct connections, the number of companies, the red line, they tend to go down globally. So you see some sort of trade-off. On the one hand, the number of companies go down while the TEU capacity per company is going up. Or another picture, same story, 2 sides of the same coin, ship sizes go up and the number of services go down. So there you have a trade-off between, on the one hand, you want economies of scale, which are good. On the other hand, you also want competition. And sometimes you have to make a trade-off there. Here's a letter once upon a time I wrote to The Economist, because they said that shippers benefit from economies of scale. And I tried to explain to them that it depends. Here's a chart that tries to illustrate this point. Every dot here is a country average. We see that if you have a bigger call size, meaning more containers are loaded and unloaded at each call in a port, then of course the ship spends longer time. That explains 47% of the variance. You see there an R squared of 0.47. But still more than half of this variance is explained by other factors. Efficiency in the port, for example. If I now look at this more from the container's perspective, you do see economies of scale. Like if you see the time spent in port per container now on the left axis, then the bigger the call size, the less time you spend per container. I find this interesting. And of course, call size is associated with the sizes. So that's an argument, I think, in favor of the ship owners, of the carriers, who say bigger ships are good. It would be a long discussion here, but carriers certainly benefit from bigger call size and vessel sizes. Ports are confronted with higher peak demand. They need to dredge, have more gates, bigger cranes for the same volume of cargo, not necessarily good for them. And shippers are confronted with less choice and frequencies. So that's something I find interesting, is a long-term underlying trend, a bit this consolidation, trends in connectivity, and the relationship between shipping lines, ports, and shippers. Now, what is happening DC? During Corona, we see waves of demand and supply. I have one mini video here with you. I hope that can be seen. Yes, so we have weekly port calls. The size of each bubble shows the number of container ship port calls. So you see China clearly by far biggest. The color shows the comparison to last year, the same week. So you see many are by now in red because of the pandemic. And China is already back in green. This one goes up to August. And let me just conclude the mini video. July and then August. And same picture in one chart. This is the world total. You see the dark blue line is you see really the impact of the pandemic, but coming back. So we are still somewhat below, but closing the gap. China is already above last year's port calls, and the rest of the world here, you see the dark green line versus the thinner line, closing the gap, but still before. Overall, ports and shipping has actually responded quite well, quite good to the pandemic. Many other things have gone down much more, employment, GDP, health issues, but ships have kept moving, and we have had a 10-point action plan going from the ship to the port to the border crossing. I just want to highlight one point here in this context of technology. Really, I'm preaching this. I'm traveling the world saying we do not have a balance. It is not a trade-off all the specific technology solutions we are promoting, customs automation, trade information portals, single windows, standardized messaging, which Martin will explain, all the trade facilitation measures in the World Trade Organization, they help achieve both, help protect populations, port workers, and also facilitate trade. I think that's a key point. Many of you have probably seen PowerPoint presentations by customs officers and others who show a balance. I think it's the wrong picture. Now, a bit more thought in the longer term after Corona, like here latest updates. You will of course have the PowerPoint here, latest charts, growth rates of the economy, growth rate of trade. We don't quite know yet the latest. It is interesting to see that the long-term trend, the trade, the red line here, is more volatile than the economy, the blue line. It used to grow faster on average, but if here I share the same data and I have the last years in red, so you see the long term there is some change. The trade is not growing quite as fast anymore. Long story, different reasons for this. What has really been affected negatively by the pandemic is investment. You see, FDI inflows, according to latest UNCTAD data, almost halved compared to last year. It's really bad. What is good, in a way, is that CO2 emissions have also gone down, but they have gone down for not so good reasons. I'll come back to the CO2 emissions. Who leads the IT reforms in your company? The CEO, the CTO, or is it COVID-19? In many cases, we see a push for modernization reforms in times of pandemic. Officers, workers, transport workers, they understand it's actually good for them to modernize, digitalize, automate. And I think in digitalization, we can learn from containerization. The container was also invented by the private sector, and the whole container was developed by the private sector. It became the force of globalization once it was standardized with an ISO standard. Now, how do we set today the rules for the future of maritime transport? And here I like this tweetable sentence: technological progress will never be as slow as today. Is it slow? No, it is not slow. It's fast, but it's getting faster and faster. So that is the message here. It's exponential, the technological progress. And it's the negotiation, ratification, implementation of conventions take time. We need to commit to whatever is the best future technological solution. The same goes for, that's the last line of thought I want to share here about the decarbonization, which also has to do with technology. It is really, in our view, my view, I would say UNCTAD, IMO, it's the big challenge for shipping and ports. There's no specific SDG, Sustainable Development Goal, about shipping, but shipping is very important for many of them. It's positive, it's really, I love shipping, nothing against shipping here, but I just want to highlight that there are, of course, negative externalities, noise, pollution, accidents, oil spills, congestion in ports, CO2 emissions. Who is paying today for those externalities, like global warming? Coastal populations in Bangladesh whose lands are flooded, investors in the Bahamas whose properties are devastated, farmers in Mali whose crops fail, and here in Switzerland, the ski resorts for the rich who have no snow. Who should pay? The polluter should pay. And the polluter should be given three options. That's standard microeconomics taught introductory courses at universities. The internalization of externalities. The polluter pays, gives the private sector, the operator, the choice. He chooses whatever is the most efficient solution. Either you don't pollute or you pollute less. Go slower, use clean fuel. If that doesn't work, you have to clean up or help adapt, filter, build flood walls, invest in ports. And if all this doesn't work, at least in economic theory, you must compensate, help those who are negatively affected. And I'm very proud to say, Dr. Wang had read out my mini CV. I used to work for the IMO in London. And here you see why I have so much gray hair now. So in 1995, this is a document I wrote as a staff member of the IMO, introducing the internalization of costs. And already at that time, 25 years ago, we stressed that the total costs will usually be minimized if each company has to choose the cheapest mix of mechanisms. So the way to go here would be, in my view, a levy on CO2, market-based measures. There are a lot of private sector proposals in this regard. I even included the ICS proposal here. They themselves do not like to call their proposal a market-based mechanism because it's only a very small amount and it's to invest in innovation. But still, I think we are going in the right direction. Let me conclude. I've shared with you some data, latest data. I hope you found interesting. I think you haven't really seen it before. Some trends, waves up and down the pandemic, and then the key two issues who are impacted by COVID-19, the push for digitalization, and also the understanding that we need to listen to scientists and that the climate change is really something we need to work on. Here are some further links once the PowerPoint is shared, and with this, I conclude my little contribution. Thank you all for listening.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Jan. Thank you very much to share with us your global and authoritative analysis from before Corona, long-term trend, till during Corona, both demand and supply meet great trouble. And after Corona, yes, you have proposed a lot of important suggestions. I think we will discuss it later in detail. Okay, now let's move to Dr. Martin. Dr. Martin, your turn.
Dr. Wang, yes, my apologies. Back again. I'm going to let me just start sharing my screen again. Hopefully this time it will work. I got rid of all my fancy screens. I'm just on my laptop at the moment. So let's see how this goes. Okay, well, hopefully you're now seeing my my opening slide, and I went through the. I have to say I thought Jan's presentation was excellent and a very good lead-in to what I am hoping to talk to you about. I've been through this slide, and so I won't detain you with it. I just got to smarter maritime logistics, the challenge, when my particular challenge started, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that. And I was really emphasizing the complexity of the world. And Jan mentioned that the private sector invented containerization. And at that time, the McKinsey, the consultancy company, did a very far-sighted report in which they said that containerization would do four things. It would reduce freight costs by more than 50%, which has happened, that it would result in bigger ships, which has definitely happened, and that it would result in the centralization of global manufacturing. And I think China's dominant position today is clear evidence of the correctness on that prediction. The fourth one, they said, was that carriers would focus on door-to-door transport. And this is the one which the carriers have struggled with over 50 years. And I believe we are now coming to a point where, for the first time, the technology in good hands is able to take us a big step forward on this topic. And let me just briefly remind you of the complexity of the world economy. We've got the producers of cargo, we've got the processors of raw materials, we've got the manufacturers of products using these raw materials, and we've got the cargo importers, which include power generation, transport, construction, and a whole bunch of these different companies and consumers. And sitting between this is the primary logistics chain. These are the bulk operators. We've got some unit cargoes, liquids and logs, lumber, that sort of thing. And we've got the secondary logistics, which is between where goods are being shipped between buyers and sellers, wherever they're manufactured. And again, we have some bulk cargoes, steel products, refined chemicals, etc. And we have this enormous liner cargo. And really, the sort of message in all of this is that you have to tailor the logistics system to the trades. And the logistics in the bulk sector, which I've just highlighted with these two green sectors here, I can now use my touch screen since I'm on the laptop, is the in bulk cargo, you have a relatively small number of parcels, and the important thing is to focus on choosing your route and choosing your shipping parameters. So deciding how fast to go, deciding whether to import materials from a distant place or a close place. These are the factors which are at the center of decision making in the bulk sector. In the liner sector, we have a very different business because maybe the bulk sector handles, say, 200,000 parcels a year. The liner cargo sector handles at least 250 million parcels. And so here we have an enormous challenge of actually handling both the physical management of the transport operation and the processing of documentation that goes with it. And I've just highlighted here the fact that we have fewer parcels, but much bigger environmental impact. And to picking up Jan's point, and we have on the liner side, very many parcels, over 200 million. And there are three variables that I believe we need to focus on in reaching these decisions, and which we need to apply differently to different sectors. The smart logistics are basically concerned, number one, with cost, reliability, and risk. These are the profit-related commercial variables. Then we have a new one which has come in now, but I feel very confident is going to be a prominent logistic decision issue in future, and that is emissions and environmental impact. And what we're going to do and discuss in my comments is how we're going to provide key people with the information to make the right decisions on the environment and emissions. And finally, the journey time and complexity. I think at the moment, these are largely ignored. People, charterers, especially in the bulk sector, don't really think whether a distance, they just think about the freight rate. They don't think about the distance and the carbon emissions. And they also are not very rational, I think, in sometimes about the way they approach the speed of ship operations, which you can save. You don't need hydrogen to save 80% of emissions. You just need to slow down to very slow. And that's wherever that's a decision that hasn't really been addressed properly yet. Management of information for each of these is essential if you're going to actually monitor system performance. So that's the fourth thing here, is that you must be giving people information. Key decision makers must have information that will enable them to weigh up the options. And that is something that so far we haven't been able to do because the IT systems just weren't up to it. Let's move on to smarter maritime logistics and cargo transport. And I've really highlighted here three factors. First of all, transport involves many operations, and I'm going to talk about that quite a bit. Inevitably, the timeline is constantly changing. The world's a place of uncertainty. The weather's different. You have technical problems, as we've seen this morning. All sorts of things can happen. And so you need to be constantly adjusting what you're doing. The idea that you set a plan and stick to it is very unrealistic. And to do this, you need real-time information. It's no good having information from yesterday. Everybody in the transport chain needs information that is absolutely up to date. And Dr. Wang referred to the many stages in the transport operation. This is a chart out of my book, and I'm not going to dwell on it. Really, the point of this is simply to show that, in fact, in moving a simple container cargo with nothing fancy about it, you're looking at 17 transport operations, and each of these is prone to risk, to errors, to complexities, and each of which needs to be adjusted. If the ship hits heavy weather and is late, if a container misses the sailing of the ship and has to go on another vessel, all of these can have impact. You know, something that happens here impacts on the lorry drivers that are going to pick up the cargo in due course. And this emphasis on accurate real-time information flows through the system. We have the shipping companies, which I believe the shipping companies already are, the big liner companies are starting to build logistics teams, but you're finding people in the bulk area, people like Klaveness are now have substantial logistics operations using technology. And of course, you have management who are sitting there looking at the information flows throughout the whole operation. These information flows, as we said, there's transport from the exporter to the port, the ships, the transport from the port to the importer. And in order for this cargo to move forward, I reckon on a physical transport point of view, you need about 12 types of transport information. And I've listed them here. I don't believe this is comprehensive, but it's a starting point, and I'm sure we can develop this list much better. But what the main point is that large amounts of information are required. And when you're moving up to 15,000 containers on a ship between 10 or 12 ports on a round voyage, change is continuous. We're not talking about a plan which, say, this team makes and then you operate that. You're talking about changes that happen day by day, hour by hour, and every change trickles down the transport chain and has implications for the people who are relying on certain things to happen. And so participating companies need real-time data, and providing that data is the job of smarter maritime logistics. That's what we're after, is continuous updating of the logistics information. Well, the third part of my comments is about transport about the documentation, because I think that if you look at any analysis of transportation, you find that documentation is in many ways more problematic than the physical stuff. If a document isn't there, then the cargo can't proceed. It may even get sent back to its origin. And so what we need to think about is streamlining information in what I like to call the maritime transport factory, so that it works efficiently and you're automatically adjusting all the way down the train for things that go wrong. And the problem with this is we're dealing with many companies and many different IT systems. As far as the transport managers are concerned, we've got the VOCCs who own ships, we've got the NVOCCs who buy in space but are managing transport, and we've got the freight forwarders, and each of these have their own transport, their own computer systems. And then we've got the various individuals involved in the transport, the exporter, the trucker maybe, or the rail firm. We've got the export port, and we've got information arriving and being transported in digital and paper form. And On the other end of the chain, we've got the port again, we've got the inland transport, and we've got the importer, and each of these have their own computer systems. And now we've got the documentation, and of course the people producing and processing this documentation all have computer systems too. And I forget how many I put on, how many of these little diagrams. It's 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There's nearly 20 computer systems involved in this simple diagram, and that's probably an underestimate. And I've added another bunch of commercial documents here, and customs documents, regulatory documents, hazardous declarations. That can get your cargo sent back if you don't submit the correct documentation before sailing to Japan. You get your cargo sent back. Trade finance, of course, letters of credit, guarantees, etc. I hope I've made my point that this is a very, very complex situation. There have been attempts to standardize this data. The single window is one of these. The Mona Lisa system is another. I think you can see that to put all of these computer systems through a single window is very challenging. And whilst it has its place, I am going to suggest that probably a more practical approach, which I think fits in with Jan's point about bringing the free market in, a more realistic way to get this to work is for everybody involved in the chain to be responsible for producing and obtaining the information they need. And what we need is a way to communicate between all of those 20 or 30 computer systems. And the trouble is that at the moment, the computer systems are not actually designed to communicate. Company databases are not designed to communicate with other company databases. In fact, that's not welcome, really. The way that you can deal with this, and a development which has only been around, it started with LinkedIn about 2009, is the Apache Kafka distributed message streaming. And what this does is allow producers to push data into a Kafka cluster. So here's a Kafka cluster. The producers push the data into the cluster and the users pull it out. So when you want to use that data, you can go into the Kafka cluster and you pull it out. And the whole thing is not done by big complex databases, tables like SQL. It's done by streaming messages, which are streamed in a unique timed sequence with an offset, which means you can identify each message uniquely. And that's the thing that makes this so good. So let me give you an example. Suppose we want to use messaging to transfer a paper certificate of origin, that's a document, and its data, and some of the digital data in digital format to the customs office of a receiver country. Then you might do that by scanning the certificate of origin and posting the file to a secure object store on the cloud. So there you go. There's lots of these things around, and obviously you use one which is which you know is secure and which has good access to the customs that are going to have to access it and download the document. So you've got your document there. You send a message to the Kafka cluster. This is the Kafka cluster here. Containing key digital data. So all you do is you copy the bits of information that you would like to go into a database into your message, and you do that automatically from your company's SQL database because you've digitalized this information. You then, the message contains a pointer. The message that's delivered to the Kafka cluster contains a pointer to the object database. That's this bit here. And it contains a schema, which is like a template that allows whoever receives the message to interpret the data that's in it. And finally, the customs computer pulls the message down from Kafka, from the Kafka cluster. It processes the digital data and it downloads the certificate of origin. Let me just quickly run you through this. So there's the exporter. He's posting the certificate of origin to the object store. He's pushing a message containing key digital data, schema, and a pointer to the document. He pushes that into the Kafka structure where it's all uniquely tabulated in these partitions which are within the topics. And then the customs guy goes and pulls the message out, discovers where the document can be downloaded, downloads it, and you've got, and the point about this is it is real time, so that the minute, if instead of being a document you're transmitting, it's a change of the status of a container, you can generate that from your database, send the message, and a trucking company can pick that message up and see that the container they're expecting on Wednesday is going to arrive on Saturday. And so basically, why use messaging? Well, the reason is it's real time, it's instant, it's secure, and most importantly, it's scalable. It's a scalable way to pass data between legacy and modern databases. And what scalable means is that small companies can use it just as easily as big companies. It's not something you've got to be a monolith to use. And so finally, smarter maritime logistics. Well, I have a few points here, but I don't want to dwell on it because it's really a subject of a very different lecture. Validation by agencies issuing document data is essential. Preventing fraud on key documents like bills of lading, absolutely essential. Security systems, things like blockchain, are opening the way to providing smart maritime logistics with a base of security. So those are the key issues. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, smart maritime logistics is very tough because it involves many companies, institutions, and data management setups. It's been too tough for us so far. Solutions including single window and Mona Lisa 2 are valuable, but they're difficult because you're trying to make one size fit everybody. Distributed messaging solutions like Apache Kafka can deliver real-time data and documents through the whole supply chain using relatively straightforward software. And because messaging systems are scalable, they can be used by small companies as well as big corporations. Diverse supply chains can tailor the messaging to provide the data transfers they need for each specific operation. So you can tailor this stuff. You don't have to get one size fit all. You build up a complex system of information exchange, real time, which meets the needs of the trade. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, the message is messaging. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Martin, for generous and unique sharing, especially on challenge, operation, documentation, and security. Now I think we will move to our panel discussion panel. Yes, this time we have two keynote speakers and also two panelists from China. Do you have any questions or comments on two presentations, Mr. Wang and then Mr. Tsai?
Yes, Dr. Wang, I have a question for Dr. Jen. UKTAT has proposed a 10-point action plan to issue efficiency on transportations in the trade. Could you give us a briefing on that? And also, what is the expectations from this plan? Do you have any suggestion on how intelligence technology would help the plan to achieve the goal?
Yeah, shall I respond directly? Of course, I would have an entire 90-minute presentation on our proposed action plan, but in a way, it is a combination of 10 different areas where we go along the supply chain. And the common denominator is really what we are discussing here also with Martin Stopford and this panel, to find the right technology solutions to ensure that, that's where we put it, keep ships moving, ports open and trade flowing in spite of the pandemic. So you apply the automation, single window messaging, digitization along the supply chain. Then you also need, and of course we work a lot with developing countries, you need technical assistance capacity building for this. And you need cooperation. You really, a lot of things, I think if there's one thing that has gone wrong, in my view, in the logistics in this pandemic, is that unfortunately, especially also governments have started to close again, to say, oh, I prohibit the export of medical equipment to other countries, they have to stay in my country. I don't want transport workers, truck drivers from one country to enter my country. And if one country allows truck drivers to come in, we have had situations in some African countries, I've seen this in Azerbaijan, different countries. So they let the truck drivers in with a good mechanism to control, to check. And then they were not allowed to leave because the next country of this transit did not allow them to pass. So that was not really fair. And of course, the one group that is really, really suffering at this moment, and you know this, are the seafarers. So one part in our 10-point action plan is also that we need to work together. We need to support the shipping industry and the seafarers. That requires collaboration from the ports, from the airlines, and from the governments. And unfortunately, there again, some governments still say, no, I want to protect my country. Seafarers stay outside. And I have to confess, at the very first version of our action plan, sort of a draft version of some technical notes, we had published on our internet website the recommendation to ports. We were wanting to help our member ports. Please be careful. Don't let the seafarers leave the ship, and to protect the port workers. And then I got a call from the International Chamber of Shipping, who told me, Jan, what's this about? And oh yes, you're right. We want to promote the opposite. We want to promote collaboration and combination with messaging, getting information, advanced information, port optimization. Yeah, that should also help the seafarers. So, I mean, I could go on and on about I can share also later on with the participants. It's a short document, it's a policy brief to have more details on this plan.
Thank you.
Oh,
and do you think that
Dr. Chen? Yes, Mr. Say, yeah, Chen.
Thank you. And Dr. Chen, do you think that in the next stage, should we be able to use the intelligent technology to set up something like a contain just for the cargo, but not for the men in the next stage by using the intelligent technology?
Yeah. I mean, the combination of like Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, I believe you're maybe targeting at this. I do not really foresee on a large scale fully automated ships, like no crews on ships. I don't think this will fly in the IMO for many, many decades. And also, if you think nowadays, the cost of crews on ships is very little. There are 20 people working on a ship that moves 20,000 and more 20-foot containers. So it's not really the issue to save that money as well, but that does not mean that you could not still automate and optimize. I personally am a big fan of port call optimization, because that really is a win-win. You go slower, you save fuel, you save money, and the ships don't arrive in time. Now, this is, of course, only from the operations perspective. If I put back my hat when long ago I used to work a little bit as a seafarer, there, of course, we wanted to arrive as soon as possible in the port and have free time in the port. But This worked only, and the background there is my father had a little twin decker, so I'm the son of a ship owner, and the ship owner would go as fast as he could because it was a charter who paid the fuel. Yeah. So I think we want to go to some better connection of information and optimize this call. And then unfortunately, there will be more time at sea and less time in port in future.
Yes, very
Thank you.
interesting and very challenging topics. Okay. Any other guests to have any comments on the two presentations?
Dr. Wong,
Yes.
I would like to put a question to Mr. Stockford, to Martin, Dr. Martin.
Okay.
Yes, in Dr. Martin's presentation, he mentioned the big challenge or the most important part of this logistics is the documentation. I would like to ask Dr. Stockford, what do you think of the role that obviously the blockchain could play in improving or facilitating the documentation? What do you think of the prospects of blockchain technology in this field? Thank you, Dr. Martin, please.
Okay. Well, as I mentioned, I came to that in the last part of the presentation, and it's a separate subject. I mean, what blockchain does is secure documents from fraud. I mean, I remember the first job I got, since Jan's been reminiscing, I'll reminisce. the first job when I went to work for an American bank was they had, this was in the 80s, and they had invested money in a center. It was called CDOCS. And what happened was, if you were a tanker owner, you had this major problem that you loaded 1 million barrels of oil, say in Nigeria, and then that cargo was sold 2 or 3 times whilst the ship was at sea going to Europe. And at the end of when it arrived at the port, the master was responsible for handing over that cargo to the owner of the cargo. And the owner was the person with the bill of lading. So if in fact you falsified a bill of lading, you could find that the master delivered 1 million barrels of oil to the wrong person and it disappeared. And so what CDOCS did was, at the beginning of the voyage, you sent the bill of lading to this secure center and they held it. And every time the cargo was bought or sold, they would be notified and they would certify that change of ownership. And when the master arrived in port, he would contact CDOCS and they would give him a guaranteed owner to deliver the cargo to. And of course, the problem with this system was that in order to take advantage of it, you had to be a member of the CDOCS system. And unfortunately, CDOCS didn't include everybody in membership. And the problem was that the fraudulent cargoes were very often the ones that weren't members. And under the rules of the system, if the cargo was sold to someone who wasn't a member of CDOCS, the bill of lading was just returned. So you had no insurance against the most risky parts. And I think that, although that's a long example, I think what it does show you is that what blockchain is about is preventing the fraudulent falsification of key documents like the bill of lading. And that applies really only, you could maybe certificates of origins, but what the blockchain can do is guarantee using the validity of some of the documentation, and that is very important because it's a small part, but a very important part of the whole process, I would say.
Oh, thank you. So just according to what you mentioned, so we shouldn't expect too much for the improvement of time efficiency by using the blockchain technology.
No, I don't see blockchain as an efficiency thing. It's a guarantee. It started out of Bitcoin to guarantee. It's a way of guaranteeing the veracity of a document, because it guarantees if you change it, it's possible to check all its provenance. And so and that, as I've tried to indicate, if it's a bill of lading for 2 million barrels of oil, that is a very risky document, you know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, maybe in the future, blockchain could be more widely used in smart logistics. Okay.
Yeah, I think, I mean, Maersk has put a lot of, Maersk had a venture with IBM to implement this. And I mean, look, it's a great building block. I didn't go into this, and thank you for raising it, because I felt it was a bit big. But I mean, there's a number of building blocks to get in place, and the security of documentation is one of those. It doesn't make you any money, but it stops you losing it, you know.
Yes.
Okay.
I got it. Thank you, Dr.
Yes, Mr. Wang.
I like the one that doesn't help you make money, but it helps you not losing it. I think that's a good catchy phrase. And I would agree. From what we see, I mean, wouldn't consider myself a blockchain expert, but we do look at these issues also with our colleagues who work on customs automation, who work on trade facilitation. And it's not really something that makes things move faster, but more secure. And in that sense, it might in future allow for systems that are better interconnected, because it loses risk, it reduces risk that could in the long term make things faster, possibly. But it's not mainly an issue of making things faster, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, if I
yes, I agree. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
so its main contribution is not to save time or for time efficient. It's for how to say to make sure that things are going right, or it can be traceable. I mean, if you looking back to their origin, you can easily find where does it come from and the way it goes. Yeah, I think that's the point.
No, I think if you go back to my example of the certificate of origin, what you do is you send the message, but you store the document in a blockchain secured place, and therefore that's how you introduce that security into the system. But it's so you're separating out the digital information which you need to make the transaction move faster from the document which actually validates the key bits of documentation.
Okay, thanks for a very important supplement. Today's our webinar focuses on smart logistics on maritime world. And really, logistics is the most important link to marine industry and related to many aspects, including say arrival to the departure port and going through custom, loading, shipping, and unloading. Also custom again and departure from destination port, as just mentioned by Dr. Jen. We have to go through a lot of formalities. Well, this is a common question for all our distinguished guests. Which part do you think has the largest room to improve, especially during this very serious situation? And what is the effective measures toward smart logistics? Yes, shall we start from this time, Dr. Jen?
Oops, but that's a difficult question. I thought that was for...
I'm sorry for this.
Yeah, I put down two thoughts. What is the most challenging? I think if I look along the supply chain, I find overall shipping and ports, they tend to measure like moves per hour or even per minute, whereas the time a container spends in customs clearance can be days or weeks. In some cases, there's a big variance there. So I would see perhaps more challenge on this trade station clearance public sector side than on the private sector side. Not saying that there's no potential also on the private sector. And the second point is really the connection, the linkages to share data through be it messaging, through port community systems, through future more global systems. I think there was a question on this also, which we didn't answer because it was too difficult. But yes, the coordination and data exchange among users, providers, public sector, private sector, freight forwarders, ports, shipping companies, shippers. That's really the big challenge in this regard.
Yes, this really needs a lot of efforts on different aspects. Okay, Martin, what is your comment on this?
Well, of course, I think that my comment is an adjunct to Jan's comment, that as in, I think the theme that's come through all of these webinars is that you lay out the technology and then you come to people. And really, the problem here is I do believe we've got the technology. I mean, I've been looking at the messaging and things for ages, and I do truly believe that'll work, but it will never work until there are people in companies who understand that what it is and what blockchain is and everything, and they understand that it's not as difficult as it looks, and they are able to explain to the senior management how you can solve practical day-to-day problems, you know. So you put the practical people together with the IT people and you start to find solutions. And not so many companies have that sort of depth so that you can put the IT people together with the, you know, maybe with the masters and the people who are actually in charge of transacting the business, because you've got to have that grassroots input to make it work.
Yes, so motivation is very important, and to try to push forward, yes, technical progress into real practice. Okay,
Yes.
okay, Mr. Wang, what is your observation on this?
Well, yes, it's a big question, or is a big challenge for the industry. I mean, in terms of today's topic, smart or smarter maritime logistics, if you take it as a whole, the whole coverage, I mean, from the start to the finish, smart logistics consists of smart warehouse, smart inland transportation, smart port handling, I mean, smart port, smart ship, and from the exporter side and then to the importer side, I mean, international global shipping, So there are many links, or we call nodes. I think the aim of the smart logistics is to save time and save cost, or we put it in another word, is time efficient and cost efficient. Of course, safety first. Okay, in terms of time efficiency, I think the best or the most important part is the documentation. Documentation takes a long time, and it makes error. It means sometimes it's a troublemaker. It's a time consumer, because you have even, as we just mentioned, for the implication of blockchain technology, try to verify the truth of the data or whatever. So in a word, I think documentation, or smart documentation, or intelligent documentation is the most important, has the biggest room to improve. Of course, for the smart ship or autonomous ship in the future, it's also very demanded. But on the way, I mean, shipment on the way is not very difficult. Loading, unloading, smart loading, smart unloading is little bit challenge, or some room to improve. But documentation, okay, has the biggest
Yes, I agree.
room.
Yes, I agree with you. Efficiency, value, yes, are all related to documentation. Okay, Mr. Tsai, I'd like to have your opinion on this.
Thank you, Dr. Wang. I think all aspects will facing a challenge. But today, technically, I would think that there are few points like the ship-shore coordinations. For right now, the ship cooperation with the terminal or with the crane is not so sufficient. So we need to keep the container loading and unloading in efficient, cost-effective, accurate, and safety. But today, we don't see the ship is less communicate with the terminal. So even you have an automated terminal, you don't have the communication with the ship. So you know very little information from the ship, and it's stopped, it does block the automated terminal to get more efficiency. And from the safety aspect, I think the seafarers cooperate with the cranes or the vessels would be a next challenge in the next stage. Because the people is, now we have less people is working on the ship, and we also have even less people working in the terminal. So how do we make this human and the machine to be coordinated is a challenge. And then I would say that for the next 10 years, maybe the data security will be an issue because you need to share the data with different companies. You need to share the data with different users, different countries. So by the time the data disseminations will be an important challenge to everyone.
Okay, thanks. Many thanks for your answer. Well, if you don't mind, may I suggest we will extend this webinar until 8:30. Is it okay for all of you?
May.
Sure.
That's okay.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, I think it's time for us to move to our audience. Now we have quite some questions from our audience. First, the name is quite difficult to pronounce. I will try. From Anna Pavlovna Hatuk. Maybe it's from Greece, I'm not so sure. Well, the question is, because of the difficulty to transfer the information quick and accurate through all over the world, is it considered the possibility to create a worldwide general control system for the exchange of ship documentation, or to create a unique worldwide control system? Who will take this question?
Well, could I pick that one up, Dr. Wang?
Yes, please.
It's a very good question, which goes to the heart of the whole debate at the moment. There's two ways you can deal with the information that exchange that you need for the maritime logistics system. Bearing in, and the first starting point I think here is just that for bulk, it's not a major problem. The amount of information is not so much of a problem. For containers, it is a very massive problem because you're moving, as I mentioned, over 200 million parcels a year, probably many more than that. And that's such a big challenge. I think you either go for a centralized system, which is what Alex is suggesting, a global system, or you leave it to the marketplace. And what I was trying to suggest in my comments was that although a global system is very nice, it is so challenging to make that system fit everybody that given the many different pieces of information you need. And I think Mr. Dongwai's point about the need to keep this information focused is very important here. the problem for the for centralizing is it is too difficult to do, I think. Whereas, and what I like so much about the messaging system solution is that you leave it to people to sort out the exchange of information you need. I mean, I believe that people like Uber use this. I mean, that's what they used in order to let people know there's a cab outside your restaurant. And it is designed to handle very large amounts of information very quickly, very reliably, and people just choose what information they need. And so I would say that, Alex, that was a better system than trying to do a global one. But then, you know, you've got to try what you...
Thank you very much for your good advice. Yes, any other comments?
Yes.
Yeah, can I come in on this? Yeah, two complementary thoughts on this, or just one. There have been thoughts or attempts in trade statistics and customs declarations because to have some centralized system. Because if you look at trade statistics, we look at in UNCTAD or WTO, you find that very often the trade that is declared to be exported from country A to country B tends to be more than what is declared to be imported by country B from country A. So trade statistics don't match, and a big challenge is to match these. And the same happens with customs declaration. For an exporter, he wants to declare a high value because maybe he gets some deduction, subsidy, VAT back. The importer wants to declare a low value. So that leads to this discrepancy. So there would be an idea, maybe have something centralized where maybe World Customs Organization, but it is, as Martin said, really, really difficult to get a centralized system. So the next best thing is to have a secure, called messaging, pull, push system, some system where at least we ensure that it's the same information that is provided by the importer or exporter. And there are improvements. There are improvements thanks to technology that, but it does not necessarily have to be a centralized system. I don't know, maybe in 100 years, 200 years, maybe there will be a centralized system.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for your viewpoints. I think some more comments on this.
Yes, Dr. Wan.
Okay.
I think instead of centralized system, a distributed system would be more practical, because today we have already digitalized many equipment and devices, so we can collect the information from locally. And in considering the edge computing, when you do the local calculation, it's much more easier than you send the data to the central processor. So in this case, we just need to guarantee every distributing system would have a same protocol. Then we would have a common database, and we don't actually need a centralized system. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for your perspective. And it seems that Mr. Wang, you also have some different ideas.
No, not exactly different. I would like to say that you know, it contains a lot of information, as Mr. James mentioned. From the point of view, from the exporter's point of view, the cargo value is, you know, he expected the cargo value is maybe to be higher for taxation or whatever. From the importer's point of view, there's another, you know, I mean, they have different considerations for this same, I mean, cargo, for the value. I mean, take this for example. What I'm going to see that in the near future, maybe in the long future, it's very difficult to establish such a centralized system. For example, for the banking system, you have a SWIFT, or even the WTO, as Mr. James mentioned. WTO couldn't establish a worldwide or global centralized trading system. So so far it's a kind of ideological it's an idea, it's good wish, but it's very difficult to implement it, to realize it, at least in the foreseeable future. I hope it could be realized. This is what I'm going to see. Thank you.
Yes, whether it is necessary still needs more discussion or consideration. Okay, we will move to next questions. Well, this is especially for Dr. Jen. How should we connect LSCI with Logistics Performance Index?
Okay, thank you for the question to Rasson. Very quickly, the two are correlated. LSCI is where I had in my presentation one chart. It's the UNCTAD Liner Shipping Connectivity Index. That's based on hard data, on number of ship codes, number of companies, number of services, and so on. Whereas the LPI, the Logistics Performance Index by the World Bank, is actually based largely on, at least the current version, on perception. The original name of the LPI was Logistics Perception Index. So it is a bit more the view of freight forwarders on the efficiency of systems. So they are both a bit different. And one other difference is that LPI is really a quality. You can have a ranking. One country can be better than another. Whereas the LSCI is, of course, also influenced by demand. China has the highest LSCI because it has most ships going there, because there's most demand. If I'm Singapore, I may be more efficient than China, but I still have a smaller LSCI because there's simply not quite that many services going there. So we try to avoid the ranking of the LSCI, which is an index of connectivity. But interestingly, in spite of these two differences, they are highly correlated. And my email is on the PowerPoint. I'd be happy to send a little study we did with a friend who is among those who developed the LPI, and myself. We did an article where we compare these two.
Okay, thank you very much for your generous sharing. Okay, next question is for Dr. Martin. Well, smarter marine logistics seems to be very promising and attractive. However, still a long way to go. Well, Dr. Martin, from your observation, how long will the way we have to go before it comes true?
Well, of course, I think the area where the sort of technology I've been talking about, the messaging technology, has been most readily adopted has been around Silicon Valley and things like Netflix, etc. And of course, there you do things very quickly. I think we're in a business where things move much more slowly, and I think that we have quite a steep hill to climb in terms of just getting familiar and with this, and also we are starting from a very low base. Most shipping companies operate in a cost-constrained environment. There isn't the sort of money there is in Silicon Valley for sort of these new projects, and and very few companies have very much IT resource, unfortunately. That's my experience. Even the very big ones, some of the very big ones do, but many of the people in the supply chain really don't have a lot of resources. So I think we're going to have to take it one step at a time, like all of this, this information. And one of the things I do like about the messaging system is it's something that you can take one step at a time. You don't have to build a world edifice. You just get things going with your particular people in your particular transport chain. And I've seen one or two companies who've done that very, very successfully. So I think, we'll see what I would say is I'm very confident that those companies that embrace this technology will draw ahead of the pack in the end, and possibly smaller companies will find it easier than the very big ones. So you might see some tough competition coming from outside. This is very familiar in the liner trade.
Okay, thanks for this unique analysis. Okay, next question is for Mr. Wang. Well, as one of the most famous shipping industry in the maritime world, what has COSCO done to make the logistics more effective and smart? Mr. Wang?
Okay, I got it. Thank you, Ms. Wang. Let me answer your question. I think there are several aspects we have done. First is to try to remove or minimize the fragmentation of operation resources. We have consolidated, different ports of terminals, and we of course we run several terminals, and the main effort is try to streamline different the links. If you take this logistics as a chain, there are many links on the chain, so we try to make the connection smooth, efficiently. Connectivity by integrating or consolidating the fragmented resources. This is one, to improve the efficiency, and another is to change the business mode, or you call it model, or the service mode. We are, for example, take the China-Europe Sea Land Express, for example. Inland, in China, we have inland exports, for example, from Chengdu to Shenzhen, and then by sea route from Shenzhen to Europe, for example, to Greece. And then in Europe, we use express train from Greece to the inland of Europe. We try to integrate this to restructure the service mode, to improve the efficiency, and to make the logistics smart. For example, time could be saved more than around 1 week compared with the traditional pure CV exporting or sailing. I think that mainly two parts or two aspects. One is the integration of fragmented resources. Another is to improve or modify the service mode. Okay.
Okay, Mr. Wang, thank you very much for your effort. And I think next question is for Mr. Cai. Well, you're in charge of the electrical design of first batch container crane of Yangsan Port. This is a very famous project. Well, what is the contribution to the port machinery to the smart logistics, Mr. Cai? Well, maybe some connection problem. Well, I think next question is for Dr. Chen. Well, very simple. Well, regarding exchange information among service providers and the demand side, would platforms be one of the trends?
Xiaoning, mit dir kann ich auch auf Deutsch sprechen. I know the one asked the question, and I will speak in German with her. Yeah, I think a little bit I've tried to answer this question with the previous one. It has to do with the centralized system or not centralized system. So I was actually just now chatting with the organizer, the colleagues. I have to really leave now to Central Africa and practice my French, but I think there are some other good questions answered in writing or not. I would really suggest that the organizers, if they agree, would collect some of those questions and we continue the dialogue we can answer in writing, because some of these questions are either too difficult, I would have to pass them on to Martin, or they require a bit more time.
Well, I believe the last question is for Dr. Martin. Well, Dr. Martin, you highlight 3 key variables, including, say, cost and reliability and risk, emission and environmental impact, journey time and complexity. Well, could you give us some more information on this, and which one do you think we should solve first?
Well, I think you've got into them all. They're all important. You can make a long list of the things you might do, but I think when you make any business decision, you're balancing different factors. And I think one of the main points I wanted to make there was that we all look at compensation, profitability, and risk. But nowadays, we are having to put the environment and emissions alongside that. And really, that's quite a big change. So when you fix a ship, you don't just look at the cost of carrying the cargo, you look at the emission. We're going to have to start looking at the emissions, and that is going to have to go into the charter party, that sort of thing. So I think my quick answer to that is they're all important, and you try to balance them together, you know.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, time is flying very fast. It has been a very fascinating dialogue. Thank you all for joining this webinar. And may I invite you to thank Dr. Martin Stafford, Jen Hoffman, Mr. Wang Dongbo, and Cai Dongwei for their excellent sharing. I do hope today's webinar is most insightful to you all. So far, the first series has had 4 webinars, including autonomous ship, zero carbon emission, advanced digital system, and a smarter maritime logistics, all related to the 4th industrial revolution at sea. Today's session has been recorded and will be available on the Marintec China 2023 website next week. The Marintec China team will contact you as to feedback and to advise you that Marintec Innovation Virtual Expo will be on from 16 to 29 this month and live on November 30 until December 4. Also, the last meeting of the first series will be on December 3, both online and offline. You can scan the QR code of the ending page to register. Thank you all for joining us today. Wish you all safe and healthy. Looking forward to seeing you again next time. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Goodbye.
Good.